So I'm here with Mr. Andrea Pessino. He's the Chief Technical Officer and co-founder of Ready at Dawn, the developers of the Order 1886. Nice to meet you, Andrea.
Nice to meet you.
So this is a third-person action adventure game. It's set in London in the 1800s, but not everything is like we remember it from the history books. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. No, it's not like you remember from the history books, but it's close, which is part of the idea. The idea was to create an alternate, universe that is close enough to what actually happened to feel familiar, and it's, you will actually encounter real characters from history, some of them a little bit out of their actual time, some of them is right in their own time. But it's still a fantastic story. It's a little bit of the same concept as the historical novel, where you have real life characters set into a version of history that is fictional but close enough to be plausible. So our game, even if it has fantastical weapons, they're still weapons that were designed very accurately to reflect things that could have been done with the level of technology that was available during the Industrial Revolution. Maybe not quite exactly something that they would have done, but someone like Tesla could have actually come up with something like the arc gun. It was within his power. He didn't do it, but it doesn't mean that he couldn't have. We went through a lot of effort into creating a world that is plausible and believable within our fantastical version of it.
Because you took some liberties with the history and twisted it around a bit, but it also seems that you made a great effort to make it authentic and really look like things did in the 1800s. Have you worked a lot on the history part, and why? Is it just to get a sense of the times, or is it more you wanted to bring up?
For one thing, yes, history is a huge interest. Rue is my partner, the guy that really has conceived this whole universe. He's a huge history buff. It's one of his many passions. And at the same time, another interesting starting point for us was when you look at all the myths, and the story, the legends that exist. There must have been origins to all of these, right? They must have come from somewhere. So, for example, in our world, centuries ago, many centuries ago, some humans started to evolve in a different direction, in a direction that was more bestial, more almost primordial. And as they started doing so, immediately, of course, they started clashing with humans that were, evolving in a different direction, the one that we evolved into. As this happened and war between these two factions started happening, immediately what they called the half-breeds, in a kind of a derogatory way, had the upper hand because they were more powerful physically and, again, more predatory. And this balance was in their favor for several centuries until King Arthur established an order of knights. And again, if you see these half-breeds and so forth, since they have wolf-like qualities to them, even though they're not wolves, they have nothing to do with wolves, they become kind of the source of the legend of the werewolves, and someday becomes popular. And then King Arthur decides to create this order of knights by pursuing the Grail, which turns out to be this liquid that they refer to as the black water, which gives them the ability to heal a lot faster than regular humans can do, and as a side effect also to live quite a bit longer. But they're still mortal, they can still die. So given that advantage, the order brings balance to the war against the half-breeds, and for many centuries the two remain relatively at peace. The order kills the half-breeds that step out of their boundaries, and the half-breeds know to stay on their own. As the Industrial Revolution hits, there is this humongous, burst of technological development, and this immediately really shifts the balance back in favor of the humans, because now they got these weapons, they got technology that they can use to really take on the half-breeds and now really put them in their place. So as our game starts, you have this world that is set in the Industrial Revolution, but you have this three-way conflict between the Order, which for centuries has done, has maintained control over the half-breeds and fought the half-breeds. Rebels, which, and this is again based in history, they represent the social unrest of the lower classes rising against, the aristocracy and the government, and they see the Order not as defenders of their humanity against the half-breeds. They see them as instruments of the government that's trying to impose even more control against them. And then you got the half-breeds trying to survive and deal with all the other stuff. So you get this three-way conflict that is very interesting and creates all kind of dynamics and mysteries that give you the starting point for the story of this chapter of the Order 1886.
Yeah, I was going to get into that because there also seemed to be some kind of social commentary in this, because the conflict between security and the freedom of the downtrodden people, that's something that you kind of can relate to in today's world.
Of course, yeah. It's, again, and here I'm speaking for Rue's design, but one of the things that he loves is the gray area, right? When you're dealing with this kind of morality and duty and honor and these knights, they never questioned the fact that they had to fight the half-breeds, but all of a sudden they're asked to kill humans, to help, stop the rebellion. And this immediately for them is a moral dilemma, because, killing humans is not really what they were supposed to be doing. And at the same time, all of a sudden something happens, weapons that belong to the Order show up in the hands of the rebels. How did that happen? This is all the stage, when the game starts, where, the player who plays through the eyes of Galahad, so Galahad, one of the more experienced and more lethal of the Knights of the Round Table, he's the one that, is tasked with, going to stop the rebellion. And once he sees this, the weapons, their own weapons being used against them, starts to think that there is something bigger than what they're told at play here. There's a conspiracy that needs to be, explored and understood.
That's a pretty new way to start the game, though, because usually you start up as Sir Galahad's apprentice, learning everything from him. Maybe eventually he would die and you would take over his place, something like that. But here you start as a veteran player. Is there any particular reason for that?
Yeah, the game, the Order is a very focused experience, and there is no filler. I'm not saying that games that are that way are using filler, but what I'm saying is a lot of kind of conventions in games, like backtracking, or none of that exists. Every single moment of the game is designed to advance the particular story, to remain engaging and interesting. So you start from the beginning, and from there until the last moment, something interesting is continuously happening. Whether it's, you alternate with moments that are more narrative, moments that are just shooting, you do a lot of fighting, moments of variety, of exploration and so forth. There's some stealth, there are some other sections. But there is never anything that is there just to give you the most basic tutorials. Of course, at the beginning, there's a progression to the difficulty and so forth, but the narrative in this case supersedes the need to make you feel like doing the hero's journey. This is not a hero's journey. It's much more of it's a bit of a more mature type of narrative that gets explored during the game.
Yeah, you actually deviate a bit from what's trendy these days, both the absence of an endless tutorial, but also the fact that this is not an open world. You're running a pretty tight ship in one direction. Are you afraid that this is going to be frowned upon, or do you think it's sort of a relief to have a focused game?
Well, I think that the best thing about making games is there is humongous variety of options. Games are wonderful because you can do so many different things. I love games that are open, that are where the player makes up the story, the player's experiences are the story and so forth. But I also love a game that tells me a good story. It still has to be a game, of course. I'm not advocating otherwise, but the Order tries. I mean, the narrative component is extremely important, and yes, it is focused. It is you're living through that story. There is no other story that you can live through. It's done on purpose. It's done specifically that way. I'm certainly not going to say that. I don't think it's refreshing or anything like that. I think it's just its own thing. It's an experience, and I think it's a very fun and rewarding one to have for a player. I don't think it tries to be anything more than that. It's just the particular type of entertainment that we felt we could bring the best of, at this point in time for our studio.
You told us earlier that you've been working on this since 2010.
Mm-hmm.
This is your first original IP, so it must feel like sort of a baby to you then.
Oh, of course, yeah. It's, we always believe that the key is to, know what you don't know. And we started in 2003. We had experience making games, but we were, green. We never started a company before. We never had to build a team. That's an incredibly difficult thing to do. Finding the right people, growing the right people into leadership positions, and have the ability to have all of the pieces of the puzzle that are needed to tackle projects of this scale. It takes a long time, and we worked with a specific goal of eventually getting to do our own stories and create our own IPs, and this was, I think, finally our time. We paid our dues in terms of building the expertise and the team and everything else. We were ready, and we went and pitched to Sony this idea for the Order 1886, and they were incredibly supportive from day one. They seemed to really love the project, and the rest is history, no pun intended.
What kind of players do you think this game will appeal to? Who will have the most fun out of this game?
Humans, I hope. I think half-breeds will have more of a problem. But no, I think everybody. It's I don't presume to know how many types of gamers are out there. I'm assuming there are just as many types as there are of people. I really think anybody who sits down and immerses themselves into the world and everything that gets presented, and the combat mechanics and the visuals, the sounds, the story. The story is very emotional. I still can't get over it. It's I can't imagine people not having fun. Of course, I should be able to imagine it, but I really think that it's an experience worth having. It's different enough, and it's novel enough in the way in which it brings this blend of narration and gameplay all together in this seamless experience that I can't imagine you not being entertained at the very least. So I think everybody can enjoy it.
Confident answer there. Well, thanks for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure all mine. Thank you.